Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie, and welcome to a preview for the Saturday Euros opening classic slate. I'm super excited about this. And if there's people who are kind of unfamiliar with soccer and kind of this Euros will be their first experience with it, I'll explain briefly a little bit about the scoring system and kind of how to take advantage of how DraftKings points are awarded in soccer. In terms of the game itself, it's a three-game staggered. Staggered meaning that like all the games aren't at the same time, which is super common in other sports, but not really in soccer. So it kind of creates a lot of edge at times. For example, if you leave your utility slot up open up until like the last game you have available in your lineup, it just gives you more flexibility. Or like if you get some sort of early lineup news, have an advantage there too, since people kind of just be playing blind at times. So yeah, there's a lot of edge to be had here. And in terms of the games and odds themselves, Italy are the biggest favorite at minus 250, Spain pretty big at minus 100, and Switzerland over Hungary at plus 115. Don't look at who's at home here. Home field advantage is a big thing in soccer, but in the Euros, every game is in Germany, so it's a neutral ground pretty much. So all these teams are kind of like, it doesn't matter who's at home, like they're all, or who's at home on paper, they're all kind of in the same spot. And like the fans will be like half and half at every stadium. So because Italy are the last game, it makes it super interesting of how much space you go early. You don't want to kind of waste all your slots too early in these games. So because you get super limited if there's like a surprise inclusion into the lineup that you would have thought was a lock had you known he was playing, and you might not be able to play him if you take up like his position too early. In terms of projected lineups, I'll go Italy first and set pieces. Set pieces are a super big way to get reliable points in DraftKings DFS, just because if you take set pieces like corner kicks and free kicks, typically get a lot of opportunity to get a decent amount of crosses and key passes. All are worth a pretty decent chunk of points on DraftKings, with crosses being 0.7, key passes being 1. And they can add up super quickly if a team gets a lot of corner kicks and free kicks. So it's always good to know the set pieces for each team going into it. If it's this lineup for Italy, it should be Di Marco and maybe Chiesa splitting. Splitting just means that they'll both have a share of the set pieces. However, we could see Fagioli in for Italy, and if he's in, he'd split with Di Marco, or maybe Pellegrini, who'd split with Di Marco. So there's a little bit of lineup dependency on who actually is in the team. For Albania, it should be a Bayrami and Asani split. We've seen Aslani take a little bit in the past, but it's been Asani and Bayrami for them mostly. For Hungary and Switzerland, Hungary pretty simple. The Szoboszlai monopoly, meaning he takes everything. However, he did come out with a knock in their last game, but I read he was fine, so I imagine he'll end up playing, and I'm not really worried about that. And for Switzerland, it should be a Shaqiri, potentially Monopoly, probably Vargas splitting with him. Maybe Ricardo Rodriguez takes a little bit too, but that's the setup for them. Interesting about Shaqiri, it's like he hasn't played a ton of minutes lately. He like doesn't get a ton. He like last friendly, I don't think he even started, which I worry about a tiny bit, but he should take set pieces if he's in. Has a little bit of sub risk. That's something to think about. For Spain, it was Yamal and Nico Williams. However, Grimaldo did not start that game. When like the last game is what I'm going off of, by the way. So like it was a Yamal and Nico Williams split for set pieces, but Grimaldo did not start. He came in at halftime, and I think they had like one total corner. He's played a combined like one half each in each of the two friendlies leading up to this game, and he has not taken a corner. But he just feels like a guy who should be on set pieces. So I'm kind of worried about that a little bit. So it's a little bit of ambiguity here for Spain. But Nico Williams is right-footed, so that's something to think about. Usually when a team is splitting set pieces. Like they'll have a right-footed option and a left-footed option. But Grimaldo is left-footed, so if he was to end up taking a share, it'd be off of Yamal, not Nico Williams. And for Croatia, it should be mostly Modric. Meyer could split the. He's the lefty, Modric is the righty, so that's like another example of the righty-lefty split. That's super common among these teams. In terms of prices and who I'm kind of targeting, it's hard to pass up on Italy. I think Chiesa will be super popular. However, there's a lot of good Spain forward choices that offer alternatives like Yamal, like Nico Williams, who are both probably underpriced considering we see Chiesa at 8,900. And then also Scamacca. I haven't looked at the goal scoring odds, but I'd imagine he probably has the best chances of scoring on the slate. That's hence why he is the most expensive guy. Issue with him is that he probably gets substituted, so he's gonna have to score in limited minutes likely. However, as we saw in this Germany game, which was the opener, like the opener Germany showdown, Kai Havertz had 20 points, goal and assists. Like these international teams tend to rely on their strikers quite a bit, which is super favorable to a guy like Scamacca, who's coming off of a super strong season with Atalanta in Serie A. Ferran Torres, I think he's a little overpriced. I don't think he starts anyway, so I'm not going to worry about him too much. Embolo, he's going to be super low owned in GPP. He wasn't even in projected. It's weird that he's that expensive. I'm not a fan of him for that much, really. Now, Raspadori, he takes some set pieces sometimes. He's the guy who probably ends up coming on for Scamacca if he doesn't end up starting himself. He's a set-taking striker, though, which is super rare these days. So, like, he's a super interesting play if he's in. I kind of like that a lot. The problem is, though, is that you'll have to be pretty conservative with your build for these opening games to include someone like that who's not a projected starter. And it probably means you're fading one of the Spain guys in cash to have room for a guy like Raspadori or even Chiesa or Scamacca. There's some real decisions to be made at forward. I don't think anyone's really gonna go to the Hungary game for these forwards, which could be some real edge in GPP for like a Bruno Varga who just had a super good game for Hungary last time out, or I don't see him, but Shalai, who's their second striker. Yeah, there he is. He's 7,900. So he's kind of interesting. Like as a GPP alternative, he has super nice logs, which I think maybe gets a couple of casuals who maybe just aren't super familiar with who's who on DraftKings. Because look at these logs, even though they were from like 4 years ago, so they're not super reliable, and I would not really take a ton from that information. Morata, he's super cheap here. You look at his minutes at last Euros, and it'll be super similar this time too. He probably will go 60 minutes around. You have to hope he gets a goal in that time, which he's super capable of doing, but it's just a decision whether you want to go that route. Like it's kind of ceiling points, which is kind of goal contributions and kind of stuff that is kind of just anything other than goal contributions is, or anything other than goal contributions is floor, and goal contributions and stuff of that like are considered ceiling. Just like a floor, for example, is like crosses, key passes, like the kind of the peripheral point system that adds up. And there's two big types of players basically that are like the crux of that, like the goal scorer types who are more ceiling plays, like your Morata, like your Scamacca, then your floor guys, like the set piece takers, like Yamal, like Nico Williams. They might not be as likely to score, but they make up for that in floor, which is, yeah, like I said, crosses, key passes. Let's look at. In terms of the rest of these forwards, like I could see myself maybe getting to like an Amdouni or something. But I'm kind of really targeting these 7K and up guys. Like I really like Morata. I like the Spain wingers. I like Raspadori, Scamacca, Chiesa. Those are my favorite guys in both cash and GPP, but can definitely get like some of these other guys like Kramrich or something in one or two GPP builds if you want to be a little bit different, considering it's a large 150K prize pool GPP with a ton of entries. So if those guys do well and some like the chalkier pieces bust, could be a great leverage on the field. But they're going to be chalky for a reason. So you have to think about that too. In terms of midfielders, I think Shoboshloy will be super popular. Monopoly set taker. He plays 90 minutes no matter what, basically, because he's kind of like the main guy for that team. He puts them on his back at times. He's not had a ton of super nice form for Liverpool just because he's not really a like consistent starter. But for Hungary, he's the guy. So like I'm super interested in him. I don't know if he's a lock for cash, but he's definitely a strong option. Demi Olmo, I don't think starts. He has super nice logs, but that was like 4 years ago or 2 years ago, whatever the last Euros was, and I just don't think he's that kind of player anymore, and was nowhere near projected. I don't think either. Like I think that midfield is pretty strong, and I don't really see a way that they don't do that unless someone gets injured or something. The other guys I'm interested in, Shaqiri, I don't think is bad. He might be a little overpriced for a guy who probably gets subbed is his issue. Another guy with super appealing logs, but once again, like I said, you can't look into those too much. Lorenzo Pellegrini, if he starts, he's a great option. He probably takes set pieces. He's an attacker. Like I think him or Szoboszlai or like one of the Spain guys is a big decision here, and I'm not sure there's a true clear answer. Luka Modric is underpriced. Tough matchup. Spain keep a lot of possession is the one worry about him, and he's kind of getting there up there in age. So it's time to kind of start worrying about his minutes a little bit. He doesn't go 90 for Real Madrid like ever, and I'm scared of that a tiny bit. Vargas on Switzerland. I think he's probably a more safe play than Shaqiri. Younger, he's playing in a better league, and I think he's a lot more better for his price point. Steven Zuber, I loved it. What was this day? This day against Turkey? It was like one of my first kind of nice takedowns when I started playing DraftKings. Will just always be a legend in my eyes. Wasn't in projected though. He probably will be the guy who ends up splitting time with Shaqiri. Like whoever starts will probably be subbed for the other. 5K Perisic is kind of interesting. Wasn't in projected, and he's ever since injury, he's kind of not been the same. He plays in the Croatian league now. I think he's probably lost a step. Not super interested in that. Oyarzabal, though, he's had a super hot start to the friendlies. If he starts, he's great value at 5,600. If he's starting, it'll be likely over one of these Spain wingers, and he probably ends up coming on for one at some point too. That's a worry there, but he's probably worth the risk if he starts because that is super cheap. Jesus Navas, I wish he was a defender. I don't know why they have him as a midfielder. That's just incorrect. He doesn't play there. He hasn't played there in like 10 years. But he'll be super low owned because of that. And he has a decent little floor to him. Wasn't even projected, but if he's in, like, I don't think that's that bad of a play. Jorginho, I think he'll probably end up on Penn still. It's kind of like his whole thing. He's got a little bit of a floor to him. He plays 90 almost every game. 120 he did back to back too, which is super interesting. That's 4 years ago. Once again, though, like I said, can't look into that too much. But I think he'll be a little bit under the radar because I think a lot of people will just go Barella. He's got nice logs. He does super good stuff for Inter. He's pretty attacking. I really like that as a play. I think he'll be super popular in cash and GPP formats both. You want to get off of that though? I think Bayrami could be a decent pivot. Set pieces. He's on a dog matchup though, which is a little bit worrying. But for that price, he's definitely worth a punt in a team or two. Probably not cash, but GPP, I'll probably have a share for sure. Fabian Ruiz 4K, I don't think is bad. I don't think there's a ton of other value there. Fagioli, though, if he starts, that'd be great play. But once again, it's a guy that you can't count on to start. You could be stuck in no man's land if you plan to have him, then he ends up not playing. 4K is not a ton cheaper than him. That's something to worry about a little bit. You're not going to have a ton of alternatives if he does not start. Defenders. The best guy in the slate, in my opinion, Benny DiMarco. He was 9K in the friendly slate on DraftKings just a few days ago. It's just wild to me that he's that cheap in this compared to that. Like I love DeMarco as a play. He'll be my first man in almost every build. My own guy. I might have like 90% in GPP or something crazy. Because at only 6K, you can get a ton of different stuff around him. There's not a ton of other alternatives that are that much cheaper, considering he has set pieces. He's pretty attacking because he plays in that left wing back role. Like I don't get how he's a defender when you have like Spain play a back four and they're fullbacks like Cucurella and Navas are both midfielders. Just doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, DeMarco will be first man in. That will be in my core, which I'll have posted on my on FSI Discord, which you can access through the website below. You should check us out. I'll be covering every Euro slate. I covered Germany today. The core smashed, and also Copa America, as well as all of these kind of other soccer slates. I cover them all. We also do golf and NFL, and there's a ton of good stuff over there. So I recommend you check us out. And I'll still also have these YouTube videos as well if you can't afford to join, but it won't be for every slate like I do in the FSI Discord. Now, Grimaldo, he might be worth the risk considering he might end up with set pieces. And similarly to DeMarco, a set piece taking fullback at 6K is great, great value. Fullbacks are super good for the DraftKings scoring system because they get a lot of crosses. And like I said, crosses can add up like super quickly. And they're probably worth too many points on DraftKings for how common they can be at times. Like you'll see players with like 20 crosses sometimes. That's 0.7 points points. Yeah, 0.7 points across. Now that's just a ton of points right there. I don't want to do the math exactly, but it's like 15 points or something. Now, Di Lorenzo, I think that's another super safe play. A guy who gets a ton of minutes, always good for 10, and not always like the most traditional kind of floor points, just like crosses and stuff, but he gets a lot of foul runs, lots of tackles. There's a ton of stuff that adds up super quickly. And once again, I like that Italy play with these wing backs. They get super far forward and gives them a ton of chance to even get some goal contributions. So yeah, I probably end up with Di Lorenzo and Di Marco as my two defenders for cash. I might end up with Grimaldo even too and go three deep there in my cash build. But I'll have a share of all of them, and they're all really nice plays. Some of these other guys, like because they're so far clear of these other kind of cheaper pieces, I think you're more inclined to go all the way down because that's the only way you're kind of really saving the necessary or like the worth value over just getting up to one of those guys over like these 4Kers and 3800ers. I suppose like Perkaz or something is not terrible, but like I said, he learns is only 400 more for cash. He's super easy to get to over that and just has so much more upside. But then for GPP, you definitely pivot off of those guys, I suppose, into like a yeah, like I said, a Bola or a Kirkaz, like this Hungary game. They also play with wingbacks, which makes them pretty appealing. So GPP pivots, I'd see those as decent options, but I'll still be way overweight on, like I said, DiMarco and Di Lorenzo in GPP. Then I think it just comes down to punts. Like I think you're looking for guys like the best thing to do for punts either a fullback who's like 2,500 or something, just like a cheap option, or a center back on a favorite if there's none of that available. Which there isn't a ton here. Like Husai might play wing back, but he's just not great. Fabian Schär was super nice for Newcastle. I don't know if he was in projected. He was. Like, I don't think that's a bad option. But yeah, like I said, there's not a ton here. Value, if he's in, is a fullback who's not bad. But then there's not really that many nice, like 2,500 guys you can really get to. You can just maybe throw whoever's in, whoever just like starts just to make the rest of the build work. But there's not a super nice value play I see here, which is just another reason why I'm more inclined to pay up at defender for a Di Lorenzo, for a Grimaldo, for Di Marco. Goalkeeper. Goalkeeper is a crapshoot in these major tournaments, I feel like really any of them can get there. If Albania somehow hold on, suddenly their goalkeeper is like 20 points if they just hold on like a 0-0 and makes a ton of saves. Italy could be the only game with a clean sheet, so maybe Karius on like 15 points, let's just say, and then he's the optimal goalie. Super variance based. There's not a ton of edge when it comes to goalie picking. One thing you can do for GVP that was correlate your build. Like I wouldn't play an Albanian striker with an Italy goalkeeper just because one of them will suck if the other does well. Almost 9 times out of 10, probably almost 10 times out of 10. So that's just a little small thing to think about. Just try to correlate. Correlation's a big thing in these, more so in Showdown than Classic, but it can still work in this format too. Like you can build for like a goal fest, like play a bunch of Croatian Spain guys to stack that game. Hope that game's like 4-4, the other two go like 0-0 or something. Like yeah, just you can definitely do that route and game script. And yeah, another thing I will say is when you're chasing in cash or even GPP at times, like say you have a guy who busts in one of these early games and an alternative that you could have gone at like 20 points and super owned. One thing you can do in those formats because it's staggered that leads to a lot of edge is playing like get off of a DeMarco, go for like I don't know, like a Bastoni or something if you're that far behind because everyone will have DeMarco above you and that'll be a way to kind of get leverage when you kind of need to close a gap somehow and you don't want to have the same guy. Like if you're not cashing, like it doesn't matter if you lose by 10 or 25. So that's just a little another small tip that you can take advantage of in staggered formats. But yeah, guys, if you're new, good luck. I hope you enjoy soccer and stick around. Check out the FSI website. And I don't know how often I'm gonna do these videos for these Euro sites. It'll depend on contests. I'll definitely have another out at some point, maybe even tomorrow, if I decide contests are worth covering for a YouTube video. But yeah, like I said, I'll cover every single slate, every soccer slate I'll do in the FSI Discord. Make sure you check the website, like I said. And yeah, guys, good luck and peace.